Hey, welcome back to No Guy Bicycles, hanging with a guy, and on Shop Talk Tuesday. Today we have a special guest. We got Bob, the bike rep. It's a joke on, whatever. Bad joke, any case, but thank you for joining me on Shop Talk Tuesday. Here we talk about the latest in the industry news and our opinion piece. And we're going to get that out there right out of the bat is our opinion piece of those particular subjects we're going to be talking about. And after that, the second half of the show, I have some questions led up from either from emails or comments from the channel. In addition to, there is a form in the description below if you want to fill that out, and I'll try to get to them today. If I don't get to those questions today, I will follow those up on the next week's Shop Talk Tuesday. And if you're watching this live, thank you for hanging out with me here in the garage. I'm in Loveland, Colorado. And if you just watching this for the first time, I'm a guy in a garage shop that I built up. I've been in the industry for 35 years. In between small mom and pop shop from Parker Bikes days to currently what I'm doing today. So with that, with my personal perspective and opinions, and hey, this is a community where it's hopefully a safe space for bike shop owners, bike employees, as well as the cyclists, the community, and so forth. So we're going to try to touch upon a lot of that today. And today is a very hot topic, and it's something I was really reluctant to jump into. Reason being, it is just really just kind of crazy to think about and try to get your head around. But so with this heavy lift of a topic, I have a special guest. So we'll jump in that in just a moment here, and we'll get the show started after this message.
Is brought to you by Medem Bikes, where you can find bicycles that won't break the bank. Great brands like Univega and Vin Diesel, but give you a good quality, safe ride to be able to do those extended rides and get into cycling. You'll find a link below.
I don't know what happened there. That was weird. Oh, well, anyway, I'm going to just jump into my guest here. Mr. John Bradley, the legend, the myth, the guy himself here. So this is the segment is as the wheel turns, so the days are our rides. And with John here being within the industry for, how long has it been in industry?
Bike shops through manufacturing, probably about 50 years.
Wow, that's a good chunk of time. And as myself, 35, we've seen a lot of changes over those years, ups and downs and sideways. I think a lot of us can agree is we've never seen anything like this all happening at once. And it's kind of interesting times, to say the least. And which leads to basically today's topic. And the headlines in bicycle retailer brain, we've seen a lot of tariff talk through them, and basically articles relating to other companies in the States as well as overseas, trying to navigate through all of this. But I want to bring a little bit of shed of light to PeopleForBikes. They are based out of, I think they're in Boulder or Lafayette, Colorado, and it's a nonprofit that helps advocate for the bicycle industry.
Yeah, it's
you probably know better than I do.
It's the bicycle industry and for cyclists in general. So it's just they're trying to promote bicycling and everything about it, from you and I just going for a ride on a bike path all the way, up to dealing with bicycle manufacturers. But they're primarily working for individual cyclists. Is their primary. They're PeopleForBikes is literally what they are, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, and they've done a lot of advocacy through Congress and so forth, and local state as well as cities to help advocate those particular perspectives. Awesome. And they released basically a full, 5-6 alarm fire topic here. And what I'm going to do is, if I can get this to do it right, going to screen share the topic, and all right, hopefully we're all able to see. Why is that still popping up?
See a lot of nice parts.
There we go. Oh, I was uploading images, and for some reason that was. There we go. Woo! Okay, technical difficulty. This is a bike mechanic trying to do YouTube, so I do apologize.
You're doing fine.
Hanging in there, one thread at a time. So, looking for people's. This is a bicycle retail industry news, and this has been around for for how long as a news syndicate for us bike shop people. But this is one of the articles that released last week. PeopleForBikes urges industry action as Guardian calls for crushing new tariffs. So the new tariffs, when you read this article, they want to increase tariffs 50% on steel. And that sounds like a blanket statement. And what does that really mean? That's where I really kind of want to give it a little more light today. Reason being is, yeah, we hear that, but what does that mean, right? Oops. So, John, I mean, you read this article and you know what they're trying to do, a call to action for. And, PeopleForBikes, they're trying to be proactive on this. And there is a link to this in the description below. And there's also a deadline on the 21st to chime in, basically, to try to negate this from happening. So it hasn't happened yet. But, first, John, what do you think about how they are trying to get this to the public, or is it more industry? And what's the call of action do you see on this?
I think it's all hands on deck because it's going to require that. I mean, it has to be everybody in the bicycle business, all the way from QPP down to I know a guy bicycles. It's just everybody, and everybody who cares about cycling in the United States and reasonable pricing. The impact. I mean, this is the word that pops in mind. It would be catastrophic, I think, for the U.S. bicycle industry.
Yeah,
cycling in general. So
yeah, I mean, well, we'll get into the tariff bit. That's another section of how it's going to affect us. But yeah, they're trying to bring the light of what's been called of action, and Guardian Bikes is one of the components of this. And Guardian Bikes makes kids bikes here in the United States. And they do have an assembly plant in
Indiana.
Yeah, and they have plans opening up, or if not already, open up another facility to build bikes, basically weld them together, painting and all of that. Which, sounds warm and fuzzy and, kind of where our current administration is trying to drive. But as, going back to your Trek days in the 90s and when they were building bikes, frames and parts, how much of that was, how much of that can they really do currently, what they were trying to do back then, and what's the missing components of back then that we still have to rely on from products coming out of country?
Well, as a bike manufacturer, you're always looking at how you stay competitive. And, we were always comparing, like, what would this bike cost if we built it ourselves versus if we imported it from a Giant or a Merida or somebody like that, Ideal. So you're looking at how much does it take to get it in a bike shop, either an import or built in the United States. So it's the problem here is that there is nobody really building frames of any note in mass quantities. There's, the business itself is pretty expensive to set up in the United States because there are so few vendors for it, all the way from componentry to, tubing and places to build, all that kind of stuff. It does not currently exist, with very few exceptions, somebody like Guardian. And, hey, all power to them. Just, I hope you can do it, but it's a tough thing to do. You think about the Schwinn heyday for over 50 years and more. They were able to build bicycles in the United States, and they were surrounded by various suppliers that were building all those parts that said Schwinn approved on them and that type of thing. And even then, Schwinn never used an American-made derailleur while they were building bikes in Chicago. They never used American-made brakes, hand brakes. I'm talking about. There were coaster brakes and things like that from England and from America. But all that's gone. So I think I'm probably overstating the topic, but it's you're always looking at what is the market price, who is the competition, and where are they building, and how much it costs to build that bike and get it out the door. So.
Yeah, I mean, being a Trek dealer in the 90s and seeing Trek trying to produce bike frames and expanding upon that to a certain point, but they had a blow-off valve in the early 2000s where they basically shifted everything back overseas or to overseas because like you said, to compete, basically, to keep relevant, to have that edge. And they tried, and so did Cannondale and various other brands out there, and trying to switch, the gears. And I don't think there's there's a few companies out there. I think Kent Import or International, they had a Univega plant. They were doing assembly, and a couple others. They're trying to do like the smaller scale bike production or assembly here in the States, but Guardian was a little bit more trying to get the whole package. To have them propose a 50% taxes, or not a tax, but tariff on steel and aluminum. Why? What would drive that for a bike company to do something like that?
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, what that means is you have to not only there's a basic tax on the steel, but if that steel is from, say, a country that the tariff on steel from one country to the next, it's not all the same. It might be more from China versus some place in Europe or whatever. So every manufacturer not only has to say, well, yeah, I have a steel bike and the steel is from China, but it's built in, Vietnam or something, the steel tubing, and then the steel tubing is welded up in, say, Vietnam or Cambodia or something. That's going to be more expensive than, getting the steel from another planet. I'm not sure I'm explaining this well. It's a mess. A lot of people, when you deal with vendors in Asia, you have to dig down to find out, okay, where do you source your steel from, all that. And the same thing is said with aluminum too. So it's going to require a lot of work. And you and I were talking before we came on, these tariffs are what's called a stacked tariff. So there's already, I think bikes were already around 25% or whatever the current thing is for a bike coming in the United States. So this is a tax on top of that. It doesn't, the new tariffs or whatever do not take the place of what is currently there. So it's going to, I don't know how we can prepare for this. It's really, really a difficult environment.
Yeah. I mean, do you think Guardian has a source in the United States to get the tubing and steel for their own bikes? And that was kind of the perspective.
I don't know a lot about Guardian. I suspect that they were using probably it's not the kind of tubing that an enthusiast, if they're building steel bikes or whatever, the bikes are not an enthusiast level. It's maybe more of a mass market level, I think. Again, I probably should have looked into them a little bit more before we got into this, but it's not, they're not building bikes to compete against Trek, Specialized, Giant, Cannondale. They're not there. Yeah.
And they're primarily just a kid's bike line too. So
right.
it's interesting that just they have really just a smaller niche about the whole spectrum of bikes, and they're really calling to action on this. And it's just, yeah, and it's not just them specifically. I forget which agency that was, or not agency, but I don't know, group in addition to is trying to increase the tariffs on that. So that's, I mean, thanks for trying to explain what is almost unexplainable in the perspective, but it is definitely something that we really want to take a look at. And I don't see a lot of, unfortunately, I don't see a lot of like news coverage. There's so much going on right now. It's hard for anybody just to drill down, or even any news they see to drill down to one particular market, because this particular increase would not just affect cycling industry, it would affect so many different industries within the companies that are trying to do what the plan is, building stuff here in the United States and so forth. But a lot of materials, like you mentioned, are still sourced out of the United States and has to come in, and that just drives the cost. For example, the Widefoot bottle cages here in Fort Collins, I had a good little chat with them, and they make bottle cages out of stainless steel. And I did ask them, where did they source their material? And it was like, well, we source it in the United States, that we get the stainless steel here. I was like, that's great, but have you been affected? And they're like, the prices did increase on the steels even being made here in the United States. And you got to think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the company that produces raw materials or tubing and so forth, they are still affected by what they need to do the process to run their business. And some of those, either tooling or whatever, the material might be here, but how to run their business, the costs of it are still being affected by the tariffs that are coming in. So that would drive even the stuff that we have or producing here in the States up higher for those companies. And in this case, it's low enough that he was able to absorb it without raising prices on his United States any product. But then again, they're great bottle cages, but they are pricier. You're looking at more of a premium product for that market. And when you're undercutting their margins, you're kind of setting up United States companies to fail to some level.
Yeah. It's like somebody like that in the case of those, not only is he's got to make sure that so in this environment, if you're making water bottle cages, so he's sourcing stainless steel tubing, so he better know for a fact that it is from the United States, that the tubing is actually produced here, or is it being, somebody's bringing tubing in and selling what size he needs. So you got to kind of drill down through that.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's fine. If not, there's a potential later on he's going to, get some sort of penalty as a result. But that's the kind of thing, you got to, if you're sitting here, if you're, say, a tool company or something and bringing in stuff and you have multiple sources all over the place, then you have to find out, okay, where's the actual steel coming from? Because of this different, it's different from one country to the next. It's dynamic and challenging. I'm trying to use good words here. So
complicated usually comes in my mind.
Kind of think of when you say,
I would say the other word, but that's
yeah.
We don't want, this is being aired in a lot of bike shops, and we don't want their customers to be hearing the F-bomb resonate onto their floor or their living rooms or what have you. But in any case, yeah, that dives into the second piece of this. And the other article that kind of compounds this, let me set it up here. It's under the opinion piece of a bicycle retailer, but what's nice about this particular article, it kind of gives you a little bit of more insights of, like we were just been talking about, the complicity of it and how we're trying to explain it, or what's the, and here in the article, it's kind of like, we really don't know. I mean, it's like yeah, let's just dive into this, because it's just one of those, did I add it to the stage? Okay, here we go. All righty, so here we have another piece, and it's like, how are steel and aluminum tariffs calculated on bikes? I mean, that is a brain teaser at best, if not an extreme headache for a lot of people. And this is what it's directly proposed under the Section 232 tariffs. And again, this is something I don't like think about or dive into personally on a daily basis. This is put in front of me because of the state of the state. This is not something I go in and, you know, search out for in my business. But looking at this article and how it reads, and it has a great breakdown of a couple examples of stacking costs. And when you get down to the kind of brass taxes of how this may affect, is you get up to 100% tariffs on a product, which to me, when I saw this in some news syndicates, and then when they were talking about that, it's like, what do you mean 100%? I mean, we don't even have 100% margin on products.
Never have.
How's this even? I mean, how's this even going to play? So my question, which kind of on this particular article directly drills to how American companies like Trek and Specialized, how are they going to be able to navigate through these particular hardships, that kind of thing, with these, where they're getting products from these, you know, once, you know, from China or partially from China and Taiwan.
It's we've never been here before with this kind of thing, so it's, you know, everybody's going to have to. It's kind of like we're just kind of groping for how to make the things work. I mean, we've never seen anything like this at any point in the bike industry. And I think there's one line in there: you better get a good customs broker, somebody who, you know, they're somebody a lot smarter than I am. You know, they can sit there and grind the numbers day in, day out, and tell you, okay, here's how to minimize the damage to your pricing structure. But you know, part of the other thing that's, I mean, this is going to be bad if it goes through, but it's just like the way things are right now. There's this volatility to it's. Oh, okay. Well, you know, now we're not so mad at that one country. We're going to change it, and so it's up, it's down, it's around. It's just a very chaotic, volatile environment. It's very tough for businesses to plan, whether it's a bike business or a car business, if they're dealing with this kind of stuff, because you're trying to project out, okay, what do we project our profits, you know, to be, or losses or whatever. But with this, it's like, who knows what is the administration will do next, you know, tomorrow, you know, later this afternoon. I mean, who knows? It's really challenging.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, let's break down this a little bit. I mean, not the particular, just the industry perspective. Back in the 90s, when you worked for Trek, you were a product manager, and you did source stuff from the Asian market and so forth. And tariffs have always been around. And how did, if any, major tariff changes when you worked there? Was there any kind of, how did Trek handle that back in the 90s?
One is when we had customs brokers, and I'm sure everybody else, you know, did and does to this day. And it was a pretty stable environment, because there weren't, you know, the reality, I mean, there weren't a lot of American bicycle industry, you know, bicycle businesses to protect. I mean, the last two, you know, bike shop brands to really build here were Trek and Cannondale, pretty much. and both hung on, as long as they could. It didn't. The tariffs, when with product management, it was a stable environment, so you knew that there I was at Trek, and I knew that my counterparts at Specialized or Univega or whoever were paying the same thing. And we knew that was going to last for a while. There wasn't this, well, what is it going to be next week sort of thing, and we never saw a jump. Actually, the thing we watched more than tariffs was the value of the dollar versus the yen or versus the NT, the new Taiwan dollar. That's really what, from a financial thing, that's what we always were looking at, is, would our US dollars, buy more or less? That was the one thing we were always looking at. But honestly, I don't know. I don't think tariffs ever came up, it certainly was nothing. It's nothing that any bike product manager has any kind of impact on, it's part of the playing field.
Yeah. And looking at today's environment where majority of the products like for Trek and Specialized are made overseas in various countries, and these stackable potential, with the current tariffs are really affected between Taiwan, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And some of those companies are not buying directly from China, but some of the stuff is sourced from China, like parts or what have you. And you were telling me, and that kind of blew my mind, is like, there's going to be a tariff on a specific part on a bike. Well, even though it's assembled and put together in Taiwan, you still have to give a laundry list of where all the parts are coming from.
And where the frame material is from, that's my understanding. Hopefully I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
Man, you'd have to be. How much education as a customs officer be able to calculate all of this? Because as I mentioned before in other videos, bicycles are not a simple thing. It's they're the most efficient vehicle on earth, but the complexity of how they're manufactured, you got frame and fork, you got componentry, you got wheels, you got parts like the stems and the handlebars and all that. Mm-hmm. And then this article also mentions there's a percentage of rubber, which is not steel, like the tubes and tires and the grips and saddles. So you got all these mixed materials in addition to mixed plants and mixed sourcing. It's like, I think you mentioned they're going to try to use AI, or one of the sources have said something. They're going to try to use AI to distinguish how much of the tariff is going to be charged on these.
That's probably a good use of AI, because it's incredibly complex.
Yeah, that's what boggles me. And then the lag on that, like you mentioned before, it's like, and then that's just not just the blanket bikes, because if anybody's walked into any bike shop or a Trek store or a Specialized store, you're going to see, from steel bikes to aluminum bikes to carbon bikes, and some niche shops will have titaniums, and all those are going to be, you just can't blanket tariff a company one tariff because all their different models are different.
Yeah, I'm sure that I think some of the you'll get your kids' bikes built in one country, or your adult bikes built in another country. So there's that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it blows my mind. I knew bikes were complicated, and even in the 90s we knew that. The sourcing and so forth, which learning through you. Being a friend of our shop back in the 90s, with my dad, and talking about, the bike industry and so forth. And now he's just adding a whole nother layer of complicity just to stay alive on top of a downturning, not so hot market for the cycling industry. It's kind of like it's a little blow.
I hate to say it, but it couldn't come at a worse time. We were just starting to recover from the COVID boom and bust. And this is, it's not good. There's nothing good about it.
this is, and I mean, I give it to Brain to bring up this, kind of a stacking, because I don't think a lot of people understand like the stacking of the material on top of this, and already the complicity of the tariffs stacking from other countries is very hard for companies in the United States. And, even the local companies that are producing in the United States, it's added a whole new layer of challenges for them too. I mean, it just on top of a soft selling, soft purchasing, volatile economy. And yes, we were talking mainly for, the inside United States perspective. And I do have several individuals that are outside our borders. And there's a few in the chat right now that are, chiming in. And it's like, first thing I just say, sorry. I mean, it's not just, this whole train wreck is not affecting us individually. It's going to be a global thing, and you're affecting global companies. I mean, yes, Trek's a United States company, but they're a global frontliner for a lot of bikes being shipped and produced and shipped to all the different markets around the world, as well as Specialized. I shouldn't leave them out, but a lot of other companies. And then you have companies like Giant, which they've had a colossal train wreck of issues in Taiwan, and they're trying to navigate. So as a company that ships globally, that's not a United States company, or even if a United States company, are they going to pull back on the U.S. market? Are they going to not want to even try to put product into United States?
Well, I doubt that, because I mean, they have U.S. entities, offices like Giants out in California, and I think the other big outfits up in Wisconsin. It's pretty level playing field. I mean, there's so everybody's in the same mess. So I think people they will struggle through it as best everybody can. I don't think any of the American-based brands have an advantage over, Giant, or, say if Bridgestone came back, or, something like that. There would not be an advantage just to have an American brand, but not have if you're building your bikes elsewhere. And that, there's not really an advantage. The only advantage I guess Trek would have would be stuff actually built at the factory. And that's pretty high end stuff. I think it is just carbon fiber. There's absolutely no steel built there. And I don't think any aluminum either anymore. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I guess the main thing is, how long this will last. And, you may have some people pulling out of the U.S. market because it may not be profitable. I mean, that's the businesses always exist. They're not charitable entities. They're here to make money, and people's sales can't support the cost of doing business, then they might pull out. So I've not heard of that. I have no inside information like people are going to pull up stakes or anything, but I'm just sort of freewheeling here. So.
Well, I have seen, and I mean, not specific to the cycling industry, but I've seen other companies basically stopped sending product to the United States. Well, one is the cost, and it was like one clothing company, I think it was in Australia, and I saw a news article from the Australian news, and they're like, well, we can't there's not enough profit to send it to the United States, and then all of a sudden DHL's like, we're not shipping to the United States. And then I think I just saw somewhere this morning about UPS basically throwing stuff in a dumpster that no longer allowed to be here through the custom direction. I'm like, where's that dumpster? It's like, I'm going to go diving. I mean,
it might be crunching stuff up, Justin. It might not be,
biscuits. You know, give myself some new titanium stuff. I don't know, just kidding. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, yeah, the second part of it is just kind of, and when I read this yesterday, it just blew my mind. And this basically hit last week. And for those who I know, people have just started jumping in. For those here, we're talking about the tariff impacts and the proposed 50% tariffs are wanting to hit or being proposed to hit here in the States by one of the bike brands, which is kind of a jaw dropper in itself. But I'm talking here with Mr. Bradley, John Bradley. He's been in the industry for over 50 years. He was a product manager at Trek through the 90s, as well as some other companies. And with his insights of the big company perspective is very insightful in how much of a mess this could be. So just a little shout out to those who just join in, and yeah, feel free to throw stuff in the chat. We'll get to that here in a minute and review a couple of your comments. And if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and throw comments below if it's affecting you in your neck of the woods, either shop, business, or companies. I've had a couple conversations with a couple bike shops and recently, and one is like one of the major manufacturers that produce outside and ship product into the United States. There's like nothing on their website to purchase. And it's just like, ooh, that's kind of alarming. Especially it's one of the major brands. And you're like, that's going to be really hard to navigate your pre-season. So before we jump into the next topic, and which will kind of allude into the next piece of this, is pre-seasons. So as a go back in the days and put on your Trek hat and go, oh, I got this. I need, John Berg's like, we need a bottle cage. I'm just going to use bottle cage as a product. Like as a product manager, like we need a new design. We penciled it out. The engineers think this is the greatest one, wind tunnel or whatever. And it's in your lap, I'm assuming, to go, okay, now source it. And then have it made. And then give me a timeline, if you can, of from that point from the beginning to when it hits the showroom floor.
There's a lot of variables in that, but it can be, you go through, particularly now, in today's environment, people are much more rigorous about, say you're going to look at a particular vendor, do they qualify? So do they meet your, rules for environmental concerns? And now very, very topical what Giant is going through with, are they treating their employees fairly, whether they're native or, people coming from other countries. So you got to go through that. And there might be a kind of like a pre-qualified list of vendors, and then you put it out for bid. Usually from design to actually getting product, like water bottle cage would be pretty simple. It's using one material. It's not, bringing stuff in. So that can be pretty fast. That could be, design it and have it actually arrive within the same year. Something else might be, the more complex the thing is, the longer it'll take. Complete bicycles, a lot of times it's, unless there's specific tubing requests or something, where people are having to make molds, that actually you start to get, building time into it. If they have to make, specific molds for drawing a tube a particular way, or stamping new or forging new dropouts, that all that adds time. So it all depends on the complexity of the project. How new is it actually, or are you just, coming up with a new design and they can use existing tubing sizes to make it, or, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I was just, the point is it takes a long time.
It does. I mean, it takes a while. I mean, there's a human aspect. Do you get along with your vendors, or
Mm-hmm.
do they deliver on time, and they say they are, and sometimes they say they are very hopefully and don't meet that. So
I'm sure there's a difference between a big company that's used a lot of vendors already, and you already have those pipelines laid out. If you're like a brand newbie and you're like, I want to make a frame and I got some money from a trust fund, There's no big who's going to give you money to do this venture right now. And they're like, oh, I want to make titanium frames. I want to have them built in Taiwan. And then you have to, do that whole vetting. But, my interesting question would be, if you were in your role today, as you were in Trek back then, would you have any hair left? Would they be all pulled out? How would you navigate this as a product manager?
I mean, you take in all the information and you try and come up with a way that, how we can maintain profitability. Does this make sense to build this particular bike? It might be, if you were to, depending on one source, and all of a sudden they get hit with just, crazy tariffs, all of a sudden you might go, gosh, maybe we won't build kids' bikes this year. I would say that you would see a lot of people with not much hair. And at this point in my life, I'm sort of one of these people without a lot of hair, but it would be really, really challenging, because you don't know, like, you say, okay, you start working on the bike the year before it comes out, and you don't know the planning, the pricing structure might go south or it might go north. It might, by the time the bikes actually get here, wow, maybe the tariffs got taken away, or maybe they got worse. It's that the chaos right now, I think, it's not just the bicycle business. It's got to be hurting just about every business out there that imports anything. Is how do you plan? And that's going to affect, do we add more employees? Do we have to reduce the number of employees? Do we build a new factory or not? I've never seen, you can tell I'm sort of trying to wing it here, because I've never been through anything like this.
Yeah, it's unfortunately become a new norm. And looking at the product releases in the last week, we had the checkout from Trek was a full suspension gravel bike, and another bike from Specialized they released, and you could see it on all the other the channels that review new products and so forth. But asking a product manager or former product manager, it's like, I would assume a lot of these products, especially the newer ones, were in development and already in process a year ago
or more.
And of course they're going to have to release it, because they've already paid money to have this stuff made, and not knowing, a year ago or a year and a half ago, it was like, process is normal. This is work is normal. This is how we're going to do, build these products. And they're always want to come out with, like you mentioned before, new. And that's how it helps drive some of these companies to get out of either more difficult, challenging times, what have you. And I would say, if you're going to predict a lot of these companies are going to scale back, which they were already, like Trek did the 40% reduction on SKUs and all of that. That was like a year and a half ago. Time's flying. But is that would you think that's going to be more narrow and deep? Like, instead of having 10 models, they might just knock it down to 2 and shelf the other ones for a while?
It's just the equation. It's got to be, each product has to be profitable, and not just we made a penny on it. It has to, be able to keep the lights on in the building and keep people working and all that. Again, I'm kind of at a loss, because we've never been through this. In some respects, the president was saying tariffs all the way, through the campaign. And we said, yeah, whatever, because last time people, were able to talk them out of it or whatever. And not this time. It's, and, it's tough. The bike industry, my entire side of it, there was only one. You had Schwinn, and you had all the Huffys, Murrays, all that stuff. They were the only ones really here. There were a few attempts. Raleigh tried to come to the United States a couple of times and didn't work out so well. I mean, it's a tough place to build bikes. Just the ecosystem, if you will, or the environment, isn't really supportive of it. And it's interesting too, because you look, the first imports that came, bicycle imports, other than the European imports came in, and they were a lot of them were on par with pricing. They didn't succeed so much on less expensive pricing back in the 70s. They were more fun to ride. They were lighter weight. Some of them were not as durable, obviously, as the Schwinns, because they were pretty much bomb-proof back then, the Chicago built stuff. So it was on performance. But then you started to get bicycles coming from Japan, and all of a sudden they were competitive. It's hard to think of this now, but there was a time when Japanese-made product was, considered in the same light. As, oh well, it's not as good as what we build over here. And then now, look, there's very little manufacturing of bicycles going on in Japan at all. All that moved to Taiwan and then into China, and then as the environments there got tough, and then it keeps dropping further south into Cambodia and Vietnam. But for different reasons. I mean, it initially left just because of, can you build a bike there? It wasn't so much a tariff issue. It was more of a manufacturing issue that drove from the United States, and sourcing that drove from building in the United States and Europe into Asia. And, same thing has happened with, it usually happens with the light industries first. So bicycles, furniture, clothing, that type of stuff. But it's had impact all the way up and down the line. So.
Yeah, it's just insane. Well, thanks for giving us a little history on that too, and perspective. I mean, it's just, yeah, okay, so that's the manufacturers. And one thought I had was maybe they'll be shifting more focus, if there is, a buying market still, where they skirt around, they'll still sell stuff in the United States and try to fill up what makes sense here, but will they shift a lot of inventory that's being produced to other markets possibly? You would certainly look at that. If you have distribution in Europe or Asia or South America, wherever, you would look at, that's a great thing to bring up. You're just going to ship that bike where you can make some money on it. And there'll be people, all the brands present here in the United States are making a calculation. It's like, I think there's a hope that this is a temporary situation, and you don't want to completely disappear from the market, because it's tough, to build back up once you pull up, stakes. So, they're going to try and maintain some sort of foothold here, but you've got to also keep the company running, and you're going to, the money's going to go where there's money to be made. So. Yeah, that's, it's like, that's the whole volatile portion of this is it feels all these disruptions seem to be, and hopefully are temporary or short-lived, but how hot and fast and heavy everything's been hitting, it's kind of hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel on this.
Right.
And like, it's like you wake up like, what else can I do to make it worse? But they seem to find another way to make it more challenging.
Yeah. The other thing I think with all this tariffs, like, all right, you're collecting all this money. Where's it going? I don't know. They're not like, well, we've got an American manufacturing plan. We're pouring all these billions into, seed money for bicycle tube production in the United States. I haven't seen anything like that. So
it's there's no plan behind it except for what we've seen. But don't want to get too far in the weeds of the political portion of it. But it's just how it's affecting, and how's the business of any business. Doesn't matter if you are producing in the United States, you're being affected regards of it. And then we have a imagery branding. It's just like, oh, I'm not going to buy from the United States. I'm not going to buy their products because of, we have an image PR problem. I would say not as bad as Giant right now, but it's getting up there.
Yeah.
And people are not shipping into the United States because like it's too much. There's, like you said, there's not enough money to be made to sustain the effort of running a business. So they're either going a different direction, but we'll see on that. But the last thing I want to dive into, or the third topic, was what's that mean for the local market? Like this, I mean, we talked about what's going up here, and you got the bike industry trying to figure it out. And then we have, well, this is the front line. I mean, the retail, this is, the retail stores. We got big, small, in between sizes. You got micro shops like me. And some of us have been affected quite a bit. And the other part of this too is the consumer, our community. A really good bike shop is really going to be focused on their community of cyclists and events, and people like to ride, and aspirations of having more bike lanes put in and bike paths and all that. And there's that's a huge, big enchilada there to talk about. But I just want to touch base on as me as a small bike shop owner, even though I'm in a garage, I'm still technically a bike shop. That's what the business license says. I'm here.
You're a bike shop, yeah.
But I don't have any vendors. So I'm kind of skirted around a lot of this because I was mostly a service center. Like I rely more on labor and used market and used parts, but I do buy some new stuff like cables and housing and tubes and tires and stuff. And I have seen prices increase, although it doesn't affect my business. But a lot of the bigger shops in the last 6 months to a year have seen the faucet turned off on their mid-range to high-end bikes being sold, and the flooding of sales for those from all the manufacturers from the last 3 years, discounting all that high-end stuff, has basically depleted that market, I would assume, to some point. And now a lot of shops have, if they're smart or been lucky or fortunate enough, have shifted gears and relied on a lot of service work that's keeping the lights on, and a lot of labor. And that's where a lot of the market is driven to now, because people are not buying newer, bigger ticket items for the most part. And then a lot of shops like our friends at Will and Sprocket, they've really dived into the used market. And, I don't think they've ever had events like this, but it's like used bike tent sale events at each one of the locations every weekend, or they pick a location. But, they're really leveraging of getting product and also selling the refurbished, fixed up tune-ups bikes and so forth. And they're a great company because they will filter some of the stuff that they don't really need, but they'll have it donated. So they're supporting the cycling community through donations and upcycling bikes that just been sitting in people's garages, and able to leverage that to make a profit to keep the lights on because their upper end bike sales are flattened out. I haven't talked to them directly recently, but other shops I have that have leveraged that have seemed to be okay. But when it comes down to your cables and housing and tubes and tires, instead of paying at wholesale level of, let's just say, like, a $3 or $5 for a tube, and now you have to charge $29.99 for a tube that used to go for $6.50 retail. That's going to be, a big pinch. And I did see two news interviews of local shops, not local to here, but in the United States. And, one shop was trying to absorb some of those price increases. But then you had some others who are like, well, I have a good community. They're trying to support me, but the high-end bikes are, they're not going to be selling. They're not going to be moving, and they're going to have to scale back what's available on the floor, which is almost in conjunction of what's available for them to buy. And it's not like any of those vendors are going to go, hey, we have a whole bunch of bikes to sell to you, because I think the faucet's going to be turned off on that.
It's going to be. We're in sort of some tough times. I mean, I if you have a large floor, a lot of display space, and you can't get the bikes, and all of a sudden that investment, your rent is going to kill you, potentially, or you got to downsize. I mean, I don't. There has never been anything quite like this. I mean, I think I've said that about 4 or 5 times already. I apologize. Well, we've had boom and bust. I mean, okay, we definitely have had booms. I mean, I was, came into the industry during the 70s bike boom, and then it went bust, and a lot of bike shops. I remember at one point, I grew up in Denver, and Denver had like way over 100 stores at one point, and then, a year and a half later was less than 100, way under 100. I would think that everybody is looking to increase efficiency, reduce floor space, focus on what you can where there is profit. I mean, what you're doing, I mean, you're like, you've got almost a watertight type of business where you're at, because, low overhead, basically, lights and stuff. But, it's going to be challenging, I think, for some of the bigger stores. It's interesting with the upper end part of the market, though, that the people that got all the whopper tax cuts, they got plenty of money to burn. They still are going to want to buy a new bike or whatever. Minute, all these guys I ride with, they're all riding like these carbon Uber bikes, and I mean, a lot of them have been buying like crazy. And with all the discounting of late, the market will slow down, but there probably is some way to survive at the upper end. But I wouldn't want to sit on a lot of inventory, because if you buy at a high price because of the bike has all these tariffs hit it, and then all of a sudden say the tariffs go away and bikes start coming in at a lower price, you're like, oh my God, I can't get my money back out of that bike. I mean, it's very, very hard to plan for. I mean, I would say it's kind of a batten down the hatches, like reduce all your costs that you can, and look for profitability. Like I think what Wheel and Sprocket is doing is great. I mean, there's a lot of great bikes out there that, sometimes literally end up in a landfill because, somebody ages out of them and the relatives don't know what to do with it. And sometimes they just literally throw it away or give it to Goodwill that doesn't know what to do with it sometimes. And, but I think there's a way to get through this. I mean, there's resilience. I mean, the key thing, I think, is bicycles are great. They've enriched my life, physically, emotionally, financially. Maybe some of the financial part is going to, go away, but, it's a great thing to ride a bicycle. So we do have that. And if, we're having trouble being able to sell imported bicycles, then you look for what's here. And a used bike may have been produced in, Europe or Asia or wherever, but it's here now, and that is not impacted by tariffs. So I would say, the refurbished, used market is going to become pretty important. And I don't know how many shops will survive. I'm not real optimistic for a lot of shops, I think. So.
Well, I mean, there are already been indicators from even the corporate stores, like, Trek and Specialized. They've been, shutting down stores. And you mentioned it may have been by design initially for Trek to flood the market, then pull back on a few stores here and there. But I think they're probably pulling back as more than they would have hoped for. But that also just shows you the indication. I've seen a lot of shops go under. And there's a lot of reasons, it's not specifically just this that'll cause them to go under. I mean, the cycling industry has always been hard. It's like, even on a good years, a good market, it's still very challenging. It's not, none of us go into this thinking we're going to make money at all. And there's a few in the chat right now are like, yeah, I love working on bikes. I work at a bike shop or at my own mobile shop or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're not here for the for the Lamborghini at the end of the road. It's not going to happen. You're here because you like bikes, you like cycling, and that's what drives most of the local markets anyway, and the local bike shops, is they want to build these communities. They like bikes, they enjoy it, and even like I'm going to throw Archie in there, the guy that I work at Lee's. I mean, he owns like half of Fort Collins, or did at the time, and he did a lot of real estate. But he's always told me, is like, the bike shop's never made any money. He just liked the bike shop, bikes in general. That's why he had the bike shop.
I mean, I think another store chain like that went away was Penn Cycle out in the Twin Cities. They owned all these properties, and then once the management group got to a point to where there weren't enough of them to be excited about bikes, and they saw it was time to move on, aging out or whatever. And that was, I mean, they were the first Trek dealer in the world, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was Dick and Bevel, or one or the other. The two of them wandered in, and I think Penn Cycle became the first Trek dealer, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
But it generally seems a lot of the stores, if they own the property, they're in better shape. If you're having to pay rent, it's going to be challenging.
Exactly. And that's always, when I tell anybody that has a bike shop now, there's like two main things you really want to focus on. One is owning your own inventory, so you have less dollars, being interest charged. And then second, don't expand, just save up and get a building, buy it outright. Because if your mortgage is the same for the 30 years, that's a lot more security than every 2 to 4 years when you re-sign that lease. Right. Always a bump. It's right. Like, even in the worst of times, they're going to want more money from you. Right. And that just erodes any profitability that you made in those 2 years. I mean, right. Through Parker Bikes back in the day, that's what I think we signed lease like 4 or 5 times, and we expanded twice, and both expansions were dumb. I mean, we should not have done that at all. We should have kept it small. But when you're in the weeds, you're like, I'm really busy, and I think I'll sell more bikes if I have more of a footprint. I could display more. Yeah. And as we found, like, good 15, 20 years ago, a lot of bike shops, they had big footprints, and they just kept on shrinking right. To be more compact and more impactful. And I think part of that was a huge internet explosion, that you can sell more with a less footprint, all those things. But yeah, looking at the small bike shops, number one, if you're a consumer, you're riding, support your local shops, go buy some tubes, whatever you need, service work, what have you, whatever they provide, because they're in some challenging times. And the service departments, like myself, have been hammered this year. Like, there's just a lot of service being done because a lot of people are fixing what they have instead of buying new, for the most part. And those service departments are being leveraged by 2 factors. One, for the demand. And second, they're going to be, especially with Will and Sprocket, which is good because they're able to keep those individuals busy by all this used product, because that gets filtered into your labor, into your service departments too. So they get a double hit there. And it takes more of, bike builders are one thing, and nothing to knock bike builders, but it's more of a simplistic process than it is to refurbish a bike that might be older. So it goes into that tune-up scale. So, if they're a week out, I'm a month out myself. I had one guy, Ping was like, "You seriously out a month?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's not going into the off season. I'm still scheduling about a month out. That's, for me, for my type of business." And you're right. I'm lucky. And a lot of shops have been leveraging what my successes have been. And they're doing okay. One shop owner is like, "I do like the shiny new things." And I'm like, you're going to have to turn off the temptation for at least 2 years, bringing that in your store. Yeah.
It's really going to be, it's challenging because, it's almost like getting a crop of used bikes, because you don't, if you need a 58 centimeter, maybe they're not, that 58 centimeter road bike isn't available, or, you're going to have to, have a good eye to select what you can make money out of, and to have enough of what people want. But it's, and it's also, you say, you need real mechanics, not just assemblers. People who are problem solvers, because sometimes used bikes are used because they have problems.
Usually are, yeah.
Or the one thing I've kind of had fun, I'm sort of my own product manager of late. Whenever I buy an old bike, one of the first things I do is put a wider or particularly lower gear range on it, because we were, there's been a lot more information about, we've all been pushing larger gears historically than, we needed or should have been. And, putting a little bit wider tire on a road bike can be transformative if it can take it, so not all road bikes some road bikes, you can't put much more than a 23C tire on, and, but
yeah, I get it a lot.
It's also kind of fun though too, bringing something back. It's like what you do with the finish work, where all of a sudden, bike's 50 years old, and all of a sudden it might have a scratch here or there, but the paint that is there looks, brands, better than new in some cases. So it can be pretty fun. And, there's a sense of accomplishment also from bringing something back.
Yeah.
Doing your Frankenstein, bringing it back from the dead on the Halloween theme here.
Oh yeah. Mr. Cutter's here.
Yep.
Bike rep.
Yeah. And, it'll be interesting. It's also being able to find good vendors that can support you with the parts that you need. Because, as you get into older bikes, we've been hurtling towards, oh my God, I think Campy and some people are at the 13 speeds now or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, can you buy a 5-speed freewheel? Not a cassette, but a freewheel,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably a large part of our audience goes, what's a freewheel? But it can be rewarding, but again, man, time to batten down the hatches, just.
Yeah. Well, if there's a lot of good mechanics out there, and they've been around like you and I, tinkering and working on stuff, and somebody will tell me a problem like, oh, I know how to fix that. It's this. And they're like blown away. I'm like, oh, you can fix that? Case in point, I just worked on a Specialized Roubaix Pro. It had been like 20 years old. Mint, like it was dirty, but you can see underneath the dirt, mint condition. I have it on my This Old Bike channel, so check it out there. And the shifters were both dead, but ultrasonic cleaning them with under hot water, blowing out all that old grease that kicks up from Shimano. It shifted great with new cables and housing. That thing is nice and hardly used, and it weighed 17 pounds.
That's pretty good.
So I'm like,
that's really good.
And the owner, when he picked it up, it was just like, it was like, even though it was a 20-year-old used bike, it was like he bought a brand new bike off the showroom floor. That's how the expression on his face was, like, this is so cool. And my point on that is, like, we've been a consumer society for so long. There's a huge used market, huge used inventory, if you will, out there ripe for the picking. Just go to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or eBay. Bam, there's bikes to every price point, and some need more work than others, and some are like ready to be just ridden right off with a little bit of tweaks and adjustments here and there.
Yeah, the key, if you're going to do that, if you venture off into the internet to buy a bike, is you want to make sure it doesn't have some catastrophic issue like a steel bike or an aluminum, any bike with stripped bottom bracket threads or something like that.
Yeah,
something. And even there, like we were talking about that one, was it a Le Mans you had that? There's a way to fix it. It may not be ideal. It won't get back to what the type of crank it originally was meant for. But there's ways to fix that.
Yeah.
But you want to if we've got people watching who aren't bike guys, just buyer beware. You want to check things out. I mean, but yeah, on the other hand, there's a lot of great values out there too. I mean, it's once in a while, just something drops in your lap. I can't believe somebody let this go. So.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of bike shops are able to take advantage of that. And even then, I mean, for example, like a bike like that, they can pick up for $300 to $500. Do another tune-up and stuff, and make a little margin on it, but you're still under $1,000 for a bike that's refurbished and ready to go. And a lot of those shops do have, like, I'm sure Will and Sprocket has a guarantee for 30 days or whatever, and then you got that securities. And then I got a fly. I'm sorry. I got a baby fly after me. So there's a huge market, and my whole channel is based off of this premise. But in the chat, though, there's somebody that mentioned about companies like Blackheart, like like the smaller either frame builders in the United States, or have, like, Tumbleweed has their frames made in, I think, Taiwan. How are they going to handle this?
It's the same. It's the same, storm for them. I mean, it's interesting too. Is I just thought about the impact here on people doing business here, but then you think about all the vendors that the people here buy from, and if brands start to go poof or pull up stakes or whatever, there may be vendors going out of, they may not be able to stay in business overseas somewhere, whether it's in Taiwan or Vietnam or Cambodia or wherever, if there's not enough bikes to be built. It's very unusual.
Yeah, I mean, even our local guys here, like Black Sheep. I mean, I'm not sure where he sources his titanium, but I mean, I think it's across the board, small, big, or medium alike. Especially if you're, companies like Steiner out of California. They do white labeling for steel and titanium bikes for companies that build in the United States. But then again, you got the sourcing of the materials, where the costs on that. And that brings me back to our conversation that we had. This is the fun part. Talk about Fairlight, and had a video that dropped about talking about steel materials on Sunday. So we did a little bit of touch upon a Fairlight, but since then I've saw from other channels and so forth. I can't remember, but even them, they don't build the bikes in England. It's an England company, and they make really cool gravel and steel bikes from Reynolds, which Reynolds is also in England as well. But apparently the frames are welded up and painted in Taiwan, I believe. Mm-hmm. So the complexity of, the tubing is made in Taiwan. It's manufactured company is Reynolds, which is in England, but it's boxed up in England and sent to the U.S.
The tubing, the tubing is produced in England. To Taiwan to be built into a frame there, and then the complete frames come back to England, or come to England, and that's where they do the prepping and building the frames up into bikes.
Yeah, they either have the full bike or you can buy the frame set, which I was thoroughly blown away watching videos of how they, even if you just got the frame set and fork and the headset, how they pull the bike out of the box where they came from Taiwan, reface everything.
Yep.
Like the technical term, if you don't know, it's like make sure all the fittings of all the parts are correct. So when you get that bike frame and fork and you have your own kit, like I did with Kevin's bike, it went on flawlessly. Like there was no major adjustments. It was just like, put it on. It was like up to spec. And just in a company like that, the complicity of having the tubing made in England, shipped to Taiwan, then back into England to be boxed up or reassembled as a full complete bike. Then you ship it into the United States. The track record on that are just like for customs is like, okay, where, what?
I wonder. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, it doesn't help. You know, the prices are definitely going to go up. But
But
I mean,
there is like the upper end, like it's a nice bike, and it, you know, that's a company too. They'll work with you on sizing and so forth, and they have really cool sizing, same size frame, but one will fit me more correctly, and then they have a different, what they call a tall or a long. They'll fit you because you have short legs, and or a long torso, whichever is half empty or half full glass, but they'll fit you more correctly. And we're cycling enthusiasts. We know certain frames fit us better and geometry and so forth. And if you're a newbie wanting to get a nicer frame, like we mentioned before, it's like get a professional fit done. And that therefore you'll be able to get all the correct measurements and specs and all that. But what I'm getting at is with this particular company, they don't have a lot of bike frames on the shelf. It's not like you look at them and go, oh, I want that one, ship it to me, it'll be here in a week.
right.
It's a 2 or 3 month process.
Yep.
Should a lot of smaller companies kind of go through like the route of 45 North does? I mean, they're limited batches, but there's such a huge freaking high demand for them. They sell out as soon as they hit they don't even hit the showroom floors.
That's a great business. I don't know. You know, everybody's going to have to chart their own path here. It's just, it's difficult. Speaking of charting my own path, Rocky's ready.
Okay.
All right, everybody. But Rocky the dog is through at the groomers, and I need to go get him. So.
Yeah, you got to get him out of that groomer jail.
Yeah. Actually, it was 43 minutes ago. I had my things turned off. So, but anyway, it was good to talk. And I mean, I hope I'm sorry to be so gloomy and doomy, and hopefully it's not as bad as we think it is. So.
Well, I mean, yes, it's challenging, but I think there's a lot of smart people out there that are a part or ahead of some of these companies, and they'll navigate a way around this to sustain. Because, you know, however you feel about any of these companies, I personally don't want to see them all fall apart and completely.
No.
I mean, we will need new bikes at some point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have anything against any of the companies. It just, you know, I mean, I hope I love bikes and I love the business, and, you know, they changed my life and they can change yours. So.
Absolutely. Everybody has their cycling story, especially if they've been in it. They have a cycling story and what they got into it and how it's impacted their life. And you hear it all the time. Like it's from several directions. From I could have been a druggie out, not me, but you know,
I was,
people, and then or people are like, I was just stagnant in my life. You know?
Yeah.
And therefore, well, thanks, John, for hanging out with us. I'll keep the conversation going when you leave. Just let you guys know. But till top of the hour. But in any case, thanks for your insights. I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a sore subject. I'm not sore, but it's a hard subject to talk about and put your head in that headspace. I think we all need to just go out and go ride our bikes.
That's a good thing always a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, man, John. And
see everybody. Yep.
Well, that was the legend, the myth. And I got to turn his mic off. There we go. The legend, the myth himself. And yeah, I've known John since I was a dumb teenager back in the day when my parents had a bike shop. And he's always been a wealth of knowledge and experiences. And it's really kind of cool to have. I mean, I didn't want to tackle this subject by myself because it's too big for any of us to try to navigate and figure it out. And therefore, it just, you know, I hope for the best for, you know, especially the smaller shops to make those decisions, the right decisions. And, you know, it's one of those things where even the smallest decision, I'm not to scare anybody, but if you make a small decision and it turns out to be wrong, it could be catastrophic, unfortunately, at some point for some of these shops. But if you take your time and think about it before you make any rash decisions, if it's signing a new lease, expanding. I don't think anybody in their right mind should be expanding right now. Should just be holding on, because like we mentioned before, the whiplash that we're experiencing currently in our market is still going to continue. There's no signs of it changing. So you need to prepare for that. And there's some of us are doing, pretty well. And that can give you the false sense of illusion that like, oh, I should expand. Like you may not want to do that right now. You may want to hold off. And some people have, like some shops have had plans of expanding for years and they can't really pull the plug because they're having a building built or what have you. But I would say the conclusion of this segment of the actual, small shops and communities, I mean, we're all going to have to rely and support each other. Even your competitor shops, we've been trying to support each other because we want somebody to compete against when things are good and rolling. It's like healthy competition is always good. And but we need to all survive this first to be able to get through it. And as a cycling community, please support your local shops. And if you need something, don't like totally freak out over the price or what have you. Because it's not their fault. Because there's the margins in bike shops in general, just to let you know, have been eroding over the last 10 years anyway. It's not that we're making a huge buck off of any bike or part that's being sold, and it's helped to keep the lights on, so forth. So I couldn't imagine myself right now diving into a brick and mortar store and paying all those exorbitant extra costs, from lights all the way down to paying rent for a landlord and insurance and all that. It's just, it's a huge pile of bills to look at every month. And if your dollars are not matching up to cover that, it makes it a very painful decision, and in a long road or a short road if you're not going to make it. But I think there is some promise out there. We're lucky in the point where the cycling communities that we have been building up, they're there, and they enjoy riding. We can definitely see that because of the service work we've all been getting. It's been pretty large quantity of, I have a lot of repeat customers now, and I'm growing that community. That's how I look at it. It's not just customer base. It's my community of cyclists that look for me to have their bikes tuned up and refurbished, or they're new to them, used bike or what have you. And I've had really good successes of that and supporting them. And, if those particular cyclists, there's one when it comes to mind, Kurt, he's out in Greeley and he's retired. He bought a bike from me like 5 years ago. And he's a huge advocate to the local community of helping paths be maintained and being developed. And he's also drew a lot of people into cycling, and has had people buy bikes for me because like, hey, I know somebody, I know a guy, and take care of me through building his cycling community out in Greeley. And he's one of those individuals that we have a lot of them out there, and they're doing all these great things. And companies too, they're as much as they want to build trails and support the PeopleForBikes to make sure our ecosystem of cycling community is intact from all of this, I do strongly recommend you to take a look at their website, PeopleForBikes. I'll pull it up here so you guys can get a peek at it real quick. If you want to, put it in the petition, what have you, you can. And I think the deadline on that is the 21st. So there we go. Let's see if I can bring this up. Am I still sharing this? Okay, yeah. So we are looking here is, they have a page for the specific topic for tariffs, but they do have, let me scroll down here. The October 7th is when this one hit, and that's what basically sprung this whole conversation today on today's Shop Talk Tuesday. Is the the U.S. Commerce Department published a new release of driving up the adding to the 232 aluminum steel tariffs up to 50%. And we can do public comments. So, it's not just the bike shop people or any people in the industry. If you're an avid cyclist, whatever, you can put in there comments like, hey, this is not good. Hopefully we can get enough people to have actually a source hub there to look into. So read up on it. I'm not telling you have to do it, but think about it, that kind of thing, because this doesn't affect just the cycling community, but it is going to hit the cycling community pretty hard if this goes into play. And unfortunately, like John was going over before, it can be very impactful for a lot of us. So I have the link below. Check it out, that kind of thing. And hopefully some of these disruptions will slow down or change to be more consistent. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about manufacturing things in the United States, but like all smart companies, you got to do it in a smart fashion. Like, it has to be done and able to grow without certain limitations, and those limitations are becoming very, very challenging for a lot of those companies and current companies alike. But in any case, I mean, it's one of those scenarios where, like John has mentioned before, we've never been in a situation before, and seeing the cycling industry as it is, how challenging it has been going up to this, and now it's alluding to be a little more, and that's affecting a lot of bike shops and your local shops and people. It's affecting people across the board. And when you look at like companies like KHS, they're decided to close, they're going to shut down. And if you don't know KHS, you may have heard of the bike line, but they were a distributor of parts as well as a couple of bike lines. And so it looks like they're going to close their doors if they don't have a buyer, because the owners are like done cashing out. It's their time for them to retire, and they don't have any extension to hand the business off. That's been a lot of companies like that in the past. But in any case, it's what we're looking at with them. That's another pipeline of componentry and so forth. But, through the conversations that I've had in the last week with other shops and so forth, inventory is going to be really, really wonky, and the prices are going to be just all over the place. And either the shop's going to absorb it, or the wholesaler is going to absorb some of it. But at the end of the day, everything seems to go up in price. I think John was talking before we got on about coffee. The bag of coffee you got like 2 or 3 weeks ago was like $12. Now it's up to 16, something like that. I don't know what kind of premium coffee he drinks, but anyway, not to tease him too much. But I think at the end of the day, though, if we all come together and, work at the solution and be a part of it and be part of the communities to see where we can help, I hope we can find some guiding light for shops and business and companies alike to do better. It's just, we all understand it's challenging times, and we're all, a lot of us are here to try to help, and we're not looking for a quick buck to it. I still have that dumb fly. Baby fly, time to die. Anyway, so let me take a peek at some of your comments here. I figured, I'm not going to get to the Q&A portion. At least going to answer some questions or comments here. Start from the top, and acknowledge those who joined the chat today and joined the Shop Tuesday. Thank you for hanging out again. If you're watching us on replay, feel free to put comments below. And I do apologize for the advertisements on the replay, because I turn those off during live. So if you want to see it without commercials, the live is due at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays. And if you like content like this and guests like John, please like and subscribe. I will be doing more with other peoples within the industry, as well as, whatever fits the niche. And, I got Bob the bike rep here. He's going to hang out with me for a little while, at least through Halloween. So Joe, thank you for joining us. I know he's up in Canada. Hopefully your paddle business was great this season. I know you do paddles. He has a great little channel too. It's It's gritty. It's fun. It's there. Heavy metal cycles down in Texas. That's right. It's probably getting a little bit nicer in your neck of the woods to do more riding and not as hot. And expert for life from the UK. Thank you for joining us from across the pond. It's interesting times here. So if you're peeking in and going, whoa, it's a hot mess. Yes, we're all trying to hang out. Please don't blame all of us, because it's, we're going to try to fix it we're going to try to fix what we have to deal with going forward. And all those who are listening in and having you in the background and podcast lifestyle in the shops and bike shops, I appreciate you listening in and chiming in when you have a chance. I know a lot of you are still really busy, like myself, still cranking tune-ups and doing our thing, and being very, very grateful and happy that we're in the position we're in to be able to help our communities as well as sustain our shops. Oh, Michael from Maine, thank you for joining in. Yeah, what a nightmare. I mean, I could just have a channel just talking about this 24/7 almost, which I don't want to do because it does wear on you. And I was very surprised I was able to get John to talk as long as he did, because it wears on us. We hate seeing things that are disrupting in a very negative impact in our cycling world, where, we love bikes. I mean, we love working on them. We like all types. Some of us don't like certain models and styles or what have you, but for the most part, regardless, even if you're a BMXer to a mountain biker to just a tour rider, there's a huge fascination of this 2-wheel thing or 3-wheel thing that's, either powered by yourself or e-powered or whatever, get you where you want to go. It's just a fun thing, and it's a great thing. It's pretty awesome. Oh, Mark Peterson, Fat Bike Films. Hey, thank you for chiming in. Anticipating prices to jump and tariffs. Result of pre-buying small things. Yeah, a lot of bike shops have done that if they have the means to do it, like kind of buy up parts where the prices are still first available. Second, they are at a better pricing. But unfortunately, a lot of shops that do that, they still will have to uptick their prices to some, not as much as they probably have to right off the bat, but try to soften it. Because as an inventory manager, I put my inventory manager hat on, it's a 1 in, 1 out scenario. So if you anticipate this, like, okay, if I have the means to buy the season's worth of tubes at this lower price and they're still available, I'm going to do that. But they may price increase a little bit in anticipation, because the next batch that they get is going to be a lot more expensive. And that's where you're looking at. I'm using tubes as an example, but when you look at all products and when it gets to bigger, more expensive products, that's why you're seeing a lot of prices have gone up, and yet the tariffs have not hit some of those particular markets, but now it's hitting they are cutting those checks. So and when you're looking at consumables, that's going to hit us, smaller shops a little bit more, or hit our customer base a little bit more too, because those cables, chains, we go through a lot of them. And if they jump in price, we're going to have to either erode our margin or split it. And basically the price is still going to go up for sure. Britt Stevens, thank you for chiming in. Oh, from Indiana. Thank you. I pulled from buying in terms of buying new at this time. A lot of shops, either your vendors don't have the product, or if they do, you're going to hold back on your preseason orders. I wasn't able to get into talk to John about preseason orders as much, but the preseason orders, if you don't know, if you're not in the bicycling realm, this is the time of year we do a lot of our ordering. We may not receive it until 6 months from now, or some now, or split the order, that kind of thing. And that's been going on for decades, nothing new. But the disruption is like a lot of those shops are going to I don't want to buy anything at this particular price, or especially for the market that's been already kind of shrinking, when I'm talking about higher end bikes and those kinds of things, they're going to not make as big orders, if at all. So some of the shops may lose those vendors, but the vendors almost at this point can't really blame anybody for not buying as much, because we're in the situation we're in. And as in bike shops, we have to worry about our own personal ecosystem, where our shop is and our community first. And we can't let anybody's Kool-Aid or, oh, I got the best deal or whatever, sway you to put you in a volatile situation and spending too much money on the wrong product or what have you. So there's going to be a lot of communication and agreements within those back channels to help people keep through. But chime in if you've heard any companies that are really bending over backwards for their independent bike dealers. Love to see their names and what they've been doing. That'd be awesome. Would be actually feasible to make the Bike Guy Mobile. Would it be actually become feasible to make a bike in USA? Not the full bike. Frames and assembly. It's not feasible to make a profit. Let's put it that way. Even back when the things were good, back in the 90s, I wouldn't say the 90s were good, but I'm just saying, back in the 90s when Trek was trying to build a lot of other bikes here, they got the wheels put together, they made the rims here or something like that, but the frames were being made here. But the tubing, like we were talking with John, is like all the other stuff is made other places, and it's very complicated. So it's not something that's just an easy thing, just a blanket say like, yeah, we're gonna do it. Yeah. Oh yeah, you guys did a lot of chat. That's awesome. Great community, great involvement here. Appreciate all you guys chiming in for sure. Just kind of reading a few of these. Oh, okay. The Bike Guy Mobile. Oh, you worked in the specialized assembly line plant in Salt Lake? Nice. In the 90s? Yeah, the M2 frames, they were pretty cool. I still see a few of those in the used market. Oh, they came from a Zonic Inc. I remember seeing the Zonic Inc. Yeah, so that's another thing too. A lot of the frames sometimes are white labeled. In other words, like I think Steiner, I'm butchering the name, sorry, but they're in California. They make titanium and steel frames. They're white labeled too. They have their own brand, and they also, like me, I can go approach them like, hey, I'm a Noah Guy Bicycles. I want to make a Noah Guy bike, and have them make the frames for me and that kind of thing. So a lot of companies have been leveraging that. So for example, like the titanium Gary Fisher's back in the day, the titanium Bontraggers, there's only a very few, and like in the 90s and so forth. They were made by a company, and I think it's in Oregon too, Portland, Oregon, some fabrications. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. And then again, where's your raw materials coming from? So it's just a cluster. $TN. Oh yeah, I saw the soybean farmer thing. That was weird. Like, of course, we made China mad, which is a huge purchaser of soybeans. So they went down to South America to buy the soybeans, and now our soybean farmers basically don't have anything being purchased. So they're gonna need subsidies from the government from basically shutting off or irritating a country that bought the majority of their crops. This strikes a chord with me because yours truly grew up on a farm for part of my childhood. My grandparents and all the grandparents before that were farmers. I came from a farming community, and seeing that kind of disruption is just, farming's hard. It's not for everyone. It still is very challenging, and seeing something like that affect, a huge base of farming. And Colorado still has a whole bunch of farming capabilities here and reliance, and seeing that it's tough. Yeah, Joe, I completely understand. Joe Channel, you mentioned, was like, we're not buying from the United States. And that was a comment from earlier. It's like a lot of, not from buying from the United States, and we're not buying from the United States. I think there's going to be a huge PR stigma on our products and our companies going forward. It's just, it's kind of, regardless if it's, I mean, you're hurting I don't know. It's we're a lot of us, or a lot of the companies in the United States will falling victim of that stigma. Let's just put it that way. And it's going to be a challenges. And, here in the States, you walk in and see a Trek or Specialized, and you don't even think, you just see those brands and you don't really think about it. Or you may know they're a United States company, but they've been, like a lot of the bikes, for Treks are made in Cambodia. They're just stamped right on the frame. They can't not show you that. And Specialized, I think a lot of them are from Vietnam. So it's always been a global thing. And not to say that any Americans are going to go in and not buy something because of where it came from. I mean, there's still used to be, they used to have that stigma. Like, they won't buy any products from out of the United States. But it's kind of like one of those things you just want to say, grow up. We're in a global market. It's been this way for a long time, regardless of how you feel about it. It's a global market. And when it comes down to a business, you want the best price, best part made, best quality for whatever it is. And, as a consumer, same boat. I want the best drivetrain. And a lot of the times, especially for like road bikes, is Dura-Ace made in Japan. At the craftsmanship and the quality of it, super superb. You're willing to pay for that, but it's being built in Japan. They were not going to build a factory. Shimano was not going to build a factory in the United States to produce. Cars is a different thing. It's really more cumbersome. But bike parts, a lot easier. Well, it used to be a lot easier to ship. We'll see. Go dumpster diving at UPS, see if they have any stuff. Oh man, well, at least the market. I mean, the bike guy mobile mentioned about e-bikes are still growing. It is. I have customers that still not bought from me, but they have bought from local shops that sell e-bikes, and they bought e-bikes and are having me look at them, take care of them, fitting and so forth. Extended services, let's put it that way. To help them with their cycling journey that the shops are not providing that they bought from. But in any case, that's a whole nother segment. But in any case, that is still a growing service department. I mean, look at Go Guava, and also Josh has Precision e-bike in Fort Collins. Go Guava's on the East Coast, or Pennsylvania, I think. And their e-bike service is just blown up because it's not an easy thing to work on, and you got to be trained and you got to know what you're doing, or you can have a really bad problem. Any case, Matt, thank you for chiming in. You're the one that mentioned about the Blackheart bicycles. Yeah. We don't know how it has impacted them, and how are they going to navigate through that. Each company is going to have to find their own way. Unfortunately, it's going to be different for every company, because either you're a titanium builder that's just doing raw source, or you're a bottle cage maker that's doing raw source in a smaller niche, you might be fine. But if you're buying tubing from other countries to make your frames, or if you're having frames built in another country being sourced from that material from a different country, that can add the complexity of how your company is going to respond to what's going forward. In any case, I'll catch a few more of these here. It's about lunchtime for me, so I'm about ready to peel off and have some lunch. Let's see here. Yeah, and I think like the tax credits and so forth, I think here have dried up for e-bikes and so forth. That's another statement here. That might slow down some of the popularity of it, but and the prices have gone up on some. Yeah, it's insane. It's just kind of insane how everything's going, for sure. All right. Vintage, yeah, yeah, Michael, you came to the right channel if you love the classic and vintage bike stuff. I mean, to me, in my head, it's still new, even though it might be 20 years old. I'm lucky to have enough of those brain cells still kicking around. They're like, oh yeah, I know how to work on those things. They're great. And I used to drool on those bikes when they came in brand new out of the box. Merrily Glay, bridge that 13. Yeah, fixed gears is the way to go. Well, a lot of people don't like fixed gears, but although I do have a fixed gear, it's not a fixed gear. It's a single speed belt drive with a Affinity Shimano, I think it's a 9-speed rear hub. Kind of cool. I think I'm going to feature that on one of my, either this channel or this old bike. Well, it's not old, so I'll probably feature on this channel how to work on it, clean it, and that kind of thing. It's just for a general tune-up, make sure it's safe to ride. Brakes are kind of wonky on it, needs to be cleaned up. So that'd be a fun one to feature for sure. That's what's coming down the pipeline. Yeah. Let's see here. Bike sales. Thank you for chiming in. I think you're up north. Yeah. So I had a question with a shop last week, and I think this is a blanket statement. I mean, you're gonna have to raise your rates. For me, how I say to raise your rates for labor and tune-ups, it's usually you try not to do it in mid-season. It kind of is like a backstab. But what you do is, and expect this from your local shops in the off season. For us here, it's the easiest. For us, it's pretty easy to do in January. That's when we kind of recalculate everything, because number one, we're gonna have to hire more talented staff or train, both is a cost. So that's going to translate to the cost of labor, tune-ups, and accessories to go to service. And if you're not familiar, if you're not a bike person, yeah, the parts have a little bit deeper margin, but that kind of helps pay for the mechanics to work there and all the tooling and everything to work. So it's an offset. So that's, don't get mad about the cost of the chain winning or that kind of thing. Not to say there's some shops that really nickel dime every little thing. Personally, I really have a bigger ticket and just call everything's included. And I try to help my community out. So those extra little costs of like installing a chain or wrapping the bars and all that, it's like, I'm not going to charge for that. I'm just going to include it within that because I want to, get that extra mile. And that's kind of how I am. Not all shops are that way, but corporate shops will not be that way at all because they'll do a line item charge. I'll put the line items on there, but just say no charge on it. So you at least know the value of it. If you did comparing myself to the bike shop laundry list, but not charging you the bike shop corporate laundry list. So that's just a marketing thing for me, what I do on that. But prices are going to have to go up. Yeah, all depends on your market. There's a talk in the chat here about increasing prices on your labor rates, and it is indicative of your market. So, and your cost of living, and also your clientele. And that's business 101 is you push the dollar amount as, if you're super busy, you keep pushing the dollar amount to a point where you start slowing down, then you readjust, which is kind of a way of doing it. But I think in the service and labor department portion of it, and especially the complicity of e-bikes and electronic shifting and the upper end bikes, of how they're being made, it's special tools and training and all that. I'm sorry, I got a fly still flying around my head. That's why I'm swapping around like a crazy man. I think we've always undercutted what we should be charging. I know it sounds kind of, mean to say, like, raise your rates, and like, well, don't. As bike people, we love what we do, and we don't usually charge as much as we should. You look at other industries, and you need to value your expertise. You need to value your time. You got to value your business structure and your market and all that, and your community. It's like, if you undercut yourself too much and end up going out of business, you're not helping your community. So it's like, it's a two-way street. And there's always going to be somebody that always wants for the lower price, and there are going to be those individuals that are just, that's all they want. And they may get okay work done for a lower price, but if you are a very, very seasoned and expertise on a certain part of the cycling industry, there's a value to that. And there is a customer base out there that seek out that expertise. Case in point, yours truly here in Loveland, Colorado. I have customers coming from the south of Denver, which is an 1.5 to 2 hour drive south of me, to an hour and a half north of me, to have me work on their bikes. And I'm a month out. I haven't really raised my rates that much, but I've really adjusted my lifestyle in the cycling realm. So it's quality over quantity at this point. Thank goodness, because I'm lucky enough to be in that scenario. But therefore, you get better tune-ups out of me, because I'm spending not volume. I'm not crushing through repairs at a mad pace to chase that dollar. It's a different scenario for me. If you can get your shops to be that way, and if you can seek out a shop and have the patience to have your bikes done as an appointment base and better get a better quality tune-up done, that might save you having a tune-up sooner. Depending on how you ride and whatever, in that case, there's a lot of variables to that, but sometimes you might be able to get that tune up to last quite a bit longer, double than from a slap tune up job kind of thing. I mean, I catch those things that will eventually get out adjustments and so forth, that kind of thing. I'm glad you guys are talking about hourly rates of shops, and I think every bike shop in the off season this year really needs to reevaluate those and take a good look and see where it makes sense to them and their community, where they can raise, because we all needed a little extra income to offset the deficit of other things that we're all experiencing now, for sure. Yeah, Jim Bean, yeah. There's a lot of talking heads out there. It's, when it comes down to it, you ask yourself when you go to the store, is it really good? The prices of groceries, are really paying attention to that. Yeah, Randy, excellent chime in. Control your inventory. That's really going to be important for a lot of bike shops going into the next couple of years. And there's analytic tools out there to help you. Retail Toolkit, where I used to work for, used to be one of those. But even then, the algorithms out of our disruption for the last couple of years, it's just really hard to adjust that. But don't just go by your gut instinct or what used to be, and not the hope for the best. Work your inventory for the worst, I would say, or at least look at that perspective. What's the worst case scenario that's going to be happening in the next year? And what inventory do you think is going to be appropriate for your community, that in service and also in sales, that you can sustain? Because you sure hell don't want a whole bunch of product that's going to sit there and not go anywhere. Even if you discount it, it still doesn't move. Just think about that. If you got a whole bunch of inventory and you don't move it, because and then you go below costs, and basically you just gave away your money, your profitability, and then it sits there, which takes up real estate, which takes up time and so forth. There's been a couple of shops that mentioned that. It's like they tried new bikes, they sat there too long, didn't have enough turns. That's very problematic. So inventory is going to be a key thing. And you may not have much inventory. So that's another thing too, is like, you want to make sure you get the stuff, and don't go crazy and go hoard the toilet paper right yet, but get stuff, or, you know, if the price is right, and if it's a bread and butter item, like chains, cassettes, and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not telling you to buy a lot, but you might want to think about taking in a little bit more. Yeah. Let's see here. Well, and also in the e-bike scenario, there's a lot of certifications and so forth at a lot of shops, and those e-bike shops, like I mentioned before, like Precision E-Bike and Go Guava, they've had a good, you know, they've gotten those certifications. And when you're seeking your e-bike to be worked on, seek out that certifications. If you're not taking it to the, like if you bought a Specialized, you can take it to Specialized. But in any case, if you're other shops, you want to make sure. Oh, Mark, thank you. I'm far from a North Star. Appreciate it. It's one of those things that we all are, like it or not, we're all in this together. And however your opinions may sway, like some people like Trav W is like, yeah, US made brands, manufacturing should be made in the United States. Sure. But companies want to grow. They just don't want to grow in the borders. So usually businesses don't have borders. If they really think about it. In any case, that's a whole conversation. And but in any case, we do our best for the most part. Hopefully we do. And coming from a small shop, working in big shops, and going back to my own little micro shop, a lot of experiences, but that you're still, regardless of big or small, otherwise, you're still dealing with people. And, you know, if they're really, you know, there's some really good individuals that work at chain stores, that work at corporate-owned stores. I have buddies that work at the corporate stores locally here, and I don't look down on them at all. And they're doing the best they can with their corporate world. And I worked under corporate for a while, and I understand the limitations, and there's only so much you do, but you still do the best you can as an individual within that realm to provide the best service or best for your community, even though you're part of the big box. So, and all those things you try to, those people try to help out. And I've had those individuals like send me business, which is crazy. It's just one of those things where it's like, I've had people refer me. I don't even know them. I mean, they either saw me on here or locally heard of me or whatever. There's something like, oh no, you want to go take that bike to I know a guy bicycles to have him look at it or whatever, because he knows what to do on those particular things, whatever it was. So they're losing. I was before all this craziness was going on. So that's how the cycling community has been evolving for the last, I would say, at least a couple of years, if not longer. And it's becoming even more so, especially when you have disruptions of certain stores being closed, either by a corporate or what have you. Those bike people, they're going to still try to find a bike shop job somewhere. And, there's a lot of mix in certain markets, whereas if it's more, you'll see faces. And, the best example I have is like the shop I worked at, and our competitor in Fort Collins was before, the corporate stores. This is years, like 20 years ago. As a staff, we never bad talked the competition at all, because even though the owners between both stores didn't like each other, it was on the sales floor, in the service department was different, because half those people you either worked for or worked with at some point. So there's a whole layer of community within staffing, that we've always been kind of taking care of each other. The owners can feel how they feel about each other. regardless. But majority of the time, most of the time, that shop is not the reflection of the owner for the most part. It's a reflection of the staff that works in the community, the cycling community itself. They like bikes. Although there's a few exceptions. I think Will and Sprocket up in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin is one. They're family owned and they're really good people and they're very active within the cycling community. So shops like that make it huge. But in any case, I mean, you know, looking at the chat here, it's like, it may seem more manufacturing in Mexico if it's less tariffs. Wouldn't that make more sense as in transportation too? I mean, it's a lot shorter distance to put on a truck and get it over the border versus put it on a boat. That's what always baffled me. It's like, man, it's so much cheaper to be able to put it on a boat, to sit on a boat for a month and get into our ports and the cost of that than it is to have a manufacturer closer. So I don't know. That's for me, Trav W is like back in the day in the 90s, I tried to make a bike completely out of the United States, custom CNC machine parts and everything from the front suspension made from Manitou, United States made, I think it was a Trek frame, and wheels from Will Smith, wheel spokes and rims, and I couldn't get it 100%. That being said, you can't. I mean, like the tires they didn't make here in the United States at the time. You can get a lot of the fancy bits and so forth. So I would still say, even with a solid attempt on a individual project, still probably 30% of the bike was still products that are not made in the United States. And then you have the whole layer where that materials are put in, which I didn't even think of at the time. That's it's a global thing, and that's where these particular scenarios really hurt amongst the global market. It's a global business. It's bike companies should not feel like it's like, let's put it this way. Okay, let's scale down to a more of a micro level. It's like, I'm a bike shop in a smaller community in the Front Range, and I'm going to tell my marketing department, like, I only want to work on bikes and service bikes and sell bikes to people that live within my city limits. I mean, dumb fly. That's just dumb. I mean, you're not going to last long, are you? Because the town that's 10 miles away has twice as the population and has a higher source of income in general population. Or you got the whole market down in Denver, which you're talking about millions of people. Which is an hour from me. So it's kind of like you look at that and you look at it as a company, like a big bike, a bike brand is not just going to just sell to or make or whatever in a one local area. So, it's always been and should be and always will be a global thing. And when you have, I'm going to say, government entities disrupting that particular business trade, we're actually hurting ourselves. They're hurting the market itself, that what they claim or try to be saving or whatever. So hopefully you guys got a lot of extra insights for my friend John. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. And I've been tormented by a baby fly. I don't know how there's a baby fly in October in my coffee cup as we speak, but that's what I'm looking at. Like, almost got you. Been wanting to try to kill it this whole time. Anyway, this is Bike Mechanics. I ain't going to harm a fly. Just wait till I get out there. Thank you. In any case, thank you for interacting and joining in the chat. Again, if you're watching this on a replay, please like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Please keep the conversation going. Put it in the chat or comments below. I forget what platform I'm on. Thanks for hanging out and supporting my channel on YouTube. Again, it makes you to make this channel and makes this community, and I appreciate all of you participating in a positive way of trying to helping each other out. I know there's a lot of bike peep in the channel, and I hope we can help each other out one way or another, even if it's a 10 or 15 minute or an hour call here and there between us or whatever, or chat conversations. We're trudging forward. We like, let's go through some wheels and air some tires and get out there and do some rides ourselves. Us bike mechanics, we do not ride enough. Because we work on a lot of them, but we don't carve out personal time as much because our workload has been insane. So I really encourage and implore all of you to get on that bike and go for a ride and get out of your head, because what we've been in is it's going to get more bizarre before it gets more better. So rely on each other, build our community. Let's get through this together. You're not alone, and I hope this gives you some insights and helps, and at least feel like you're part of something versus rejecting a whole bunch of things. But in any case, hope everybody's doing well out there, and keep wrenching those tools. And hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. I'll have a condensed version of this. I'll re-chop it up. This will seem to be working pretty well for me, so you'll see a more condensed version. So if you miss one and you just want to spend an extra 10, 15, I figured some people just don't have the time to listen to the whole thing. More of a sample size 10, 20-minute version of them, of like the news portion anyway, will be digestible for those who don't really have the time. I get it. I mean, I don't have the time to, I've been listening to podcasts, but I'm doing a whole bunch of other things while I'm doing it. And, but in any case, yeah, crazy, right? Yeah. Well, and again, thanks for hanging out with me in the garage. And if it's nice in your neck of the woods, please go for a ride. And again, smash that like, get me out there. A lot of you guys joined in, about double what I've seen so far. So this is awesome. Great community build. And you will see more content like this, more topics and so forth. And again, sorry, I really didn't get to the bike question portion of this segment because John likes to talk. No, I'm just kidding. Not blaming him. It's something we have to feel like really need to be talked about and wanting to get aired. And regardless of how you are positioned politically or what have you, or in the States or out of the States, whatever, hopefully we can just, with what we love doing in bike industry, we're going to try to trudge forward and try to help our communities grow. It's all about growing. And Bob, the sales rep here, we'll be seeing more of him. Hey, so Cutters, the movie, #1, in the comments or the chat below, name the movie and name the main character. That's your homework. That's a stupid movie, but it's fun. It's what I got really intrigued in cycling back in the day. I was watching that, but you guys. All right, let's get pumped. It's Tuesday. We got a lot of work to do. More than I could ever imagine this time of year. Get those decorations up. Thanks again for hanging out. Appreciate all of you. Oh, stretch. Here, fly. Nobody likes you, fly. Now you disappear. These bash of flies. Insane. I always leave a little bit of lead off for tail end trailers or whatever they put on there. Go find something else fun to do. Get outside, go ride. I'm gonna go ride today. Yeah, it's like 70s and beautiful trees, colors. Check out the bike path. Oh, Mark, you got it. Yeah, Breakaway. I think the main character's name was Dave. I could be wrong. I was thinking about naming the mannequin Dave, but Bob the bike rep sounded like a little bit better on the roll of the tongue. Yeah, I'll leave a little intro. Thanks again. You guys have a good day.